It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, Emma here, and today I'm coming at you with a brutally honest chat about my experience of the University of Cambridge. I'd just like to preface this video before I start by saying that this is just my experience. I can only speak on behalf of myself. Other people might have different experiences. If you are planning on going to Cambridge, you might have a different experience. So I don't want this video to put anyone off in any way from applying to Cambridge or accepting an offer at Cambridge. This is just my experience as a first generation student, as a northern student, as a state school student, and I'd like to share that with you guys. Please stick around till the end to make sure you've heard everything. It's really important that you don't just hear one side of the story. So if you can stick all the way through to the end, please do that. And with that said, let's get started. So the first thing I'd like to say about Cambridge, or the first thing that surprised me when I started Cambridge, is that in my college, and probably other colleges, I'm not sure, there were distinct social groups. I don't know what I expected before going to Cambridge. I don't know if I thought it would be one big communal utopia where everyone was best friends, and it wouldn't be like school where you had like your popular group, your sporty group, your nerdy group. But it is kind of like that. Now, this isn't a bad thing. I'm not saying I ever felt ostracized. I'm just saying that there were distinct social groups. And this is natural. Of course, you're going to make friends with people who are similar to you and who have similar interests. But I must admit, everybody was super friendly, super sociable. I could go for coffee with anyone. I could chat with anybody. So I never felt like I wasn't part of a certain group. College was such a friendly environment. That said, out of all the nerds that apply to Cambridge and get into Cambridge, somehow it feels that my friendship group ended up being the nerdy group. Like, how can you be the nerdiest of the nerds? But that seemed to happen, and I was quite surprised about it. I thought, I'm relatively normal, I'll just blend into the background. And here I am, being one big nerd all over again, just like at school. But there was never any animosity. I never felt judged or that people were mean to me because I was more academic and chose to stay in and study instead of going to parties and drinking and things. So don't let the idea that there are distinct social groups put you off from attending Cambridge University. Next up, it's true, the workload is insanely intense. It's a lot of work. I could never have prepared myself for it. The summer before I started Cambridge, I did have to do a lot of prep work, a lot of reading before the term started. And that already gave me the sense that there would be a lot of work, but I never could have predicted or foreseen the amount of work that was coming up, and I never could have prepared myself for that. And people are struggling. It's hard. For me, I've always had a really strong work ethic. I like working hard. I like doing extra work. I like doing extra reading. Because I enjoy it, because I am academic and I love learning and I love a challenge. But if you don't feel that you like the pressure or you like that kind of competitive environment, you need to understand that at Cambridge you are with the best of the best and you will feel that pressure. And just as an FYI, that is what it is like. It is not a myth, it is true. The workload is intense. That said, my professors cared so much about my well-being and about my mental health. If you are struggling, they will make sure you know that there are provisions in place to help you. You can speak to your professors, you can speak to a counsellor, you can speak to welfare tutors. They will encourage you to take breaks. They will extend your deadlines if you need that. You can actually have a chat about how to better manage the workload if that's what you're struggling with. And if it comes to it, you can decide to take a year out, which we call intermitting, and come back when you feel that you're more prepared to tackle the workload again. They understand that things happen in your personal life as well that mean you can't deal with the pressure of Cambridge and you might need to leave and come back or leave altogether, and that's okay. They will support you. You won't be left to struggle on your own. I can promise you this. If you're worried about the workload, realistically, yes, it's hard, but you won't be left to struggle. Next, I'd like to talk about my experience of being a northern student at the University of Cambridge. I'm not gonna lie, the large majority of students there are from the south of England. A lot of people are London based. Quick disclaimer, I didn't mean to say that the large majority of students at Cambridge are from London, just that you're more likely to come across someone from London or the south of England than you are the north of England. But Cambridge is definitely making a big effort to get lots of different kinds of students into the university from lots of different diverse backgrounds. You do definitely feel that. And that's not a bad thing. Like, the university is so diverse. It's not just London. It's not just, the north-south divide. There are international students. There are people from all walks of life, from different cultural backgrounds, social backgrounds. And this is just my experience of being northern, first-generation, state school educated. But if you make friends with people who are predominantly from the south, like I did, you can feel left out when you see them meeting up in the holidays, doing things together over summer breaks. You might not have the finances to travel there to be with them. And it definitely has been difficult for me seeing my friends meet up regularly when I haven't been able to, or it's too far for me to travel to see everybody. But again, I never felt left out, ostracized, or bullied for being northern. There was the odd joke about my accent. Some people might say, "Oh, you study English. What are those things you read, Emma?" And I'd say, "Books." And I've never seen people laugh so hard at the way a northern person says the word book, but that was just sort of a running joke, and it never felt like I was being mocked or made fun of. It was definitely a banterous culture, that sort of jokey north-south divide, but there was never any hostility or aggression there. I definitely felt welcomed by all of my peers, and as things go, Jesus College, which is the college I studied at, has a very large northern population. So the reason I applied there is because I actually visited there on access trips, which are for people from non-conventional backgrounds. Cambridge will invite you down if you're achieving high grades at your school, and they will try and encourage you to apply if you might never have considered university before, or if nobody in your family's been to university before. So that's how I discovered Jesus. And it did mean that a lot of students at Jesus were from the north, because they'd also been on similar trips like that, and I'd met some of them on trips before we'd actually got in and accepted our offers and started studying there. So it's so lovely when you're walking around college and you hear a northern accent, you're like, "Oh, that's familiar, where are you from?" And it's definitely an inclusive environment. So don't be worried if you think there's going to be a north-south divide, or if you think people will mock you. In my experience, it's just not true. Kind of on the back of that, there were London meetups before I started my first year at the University of Cambridge. So I think these were arranged independently. I'm not sure the university arranged them. I think the university did have some formal meetups arranged, and they did come to Newcastle, and I didn't attend because I couldn't make the date they'd arranged. But there were some informal meetups made via a group chat of offer holders that was made on Facebook. So it did mean that when I arrived at university, some people had already established their friendship groups, they'd made friends, they'd met up beforehand, and that was quite surprising for me. Obviously, I didn't know anybody before I started, so I did feel slightly worried that everybody had already picked who they wanted to be friends with, and I'd missed the boat, or I was a bit too late to that. Again, that's just not true. That is just something I worried about when I started, and I did wish that I'd had a chance to meet people beforehand, but it definitely didn't hold me back from making friends. It was definitely something that I was worried about in my own mind, but didn't actually happen. And I did definitely have plenty of opportunities to meet friends in the first week, in Freshers Week. Though, one point to be made about Freshers Week, it's not like other universities, or at least from what I've heard from my friends, a Cambridge University Freshers Week is intense. You will go to lots of talks, lots of lectures. There will be professors telling you about what Cambridge is like, what resources are available to you. People will be going out clubbing. I personally didn't, because they had a lot of talks arranged for 9 a.m. the next day where you had to attend. It was compulsory, and they'd mark your name down. So it wasn't like a normal Freshers Week of everyone moves in and it's one big party. It was like, here's a talk about where you can access the career service. Here's a talk about where your faculty will be. Here's a talk from all the students who will show you where your lecture block will be. So it was very go, go, go. And I didn't really have that big party celebration, lots of drinking, lots of meeting people. There were arranged events like pizza nights and come talk to your student union and things where you could meet people, but it definitely wasn't as wild or free as I expected Freshers Week to be. Next up is a point about your friends and family back home. Again, this is just my personal experience, but some people will judge you based on the stereotypes they have in their minds of Cambridge. So I did have some people say to me, "Oh, I bet you'll change when you go to Cambridge. You'll make posh friends. You'll forget about us. You'll be too good for us." And people who think like that, I suppose, aren't really worth your time. If that's what they really think of you, and they won't take the time to realise you won't change and you won't become somebody who's really pretentious and thinks they're better than everybody else, then that's their loss. But you will have some people who think that you have changed or you will change, and they'll back away from you because of that. But you'll also meet like-minded people at Cambridge who don't think this way about you and have similar interests to you, and your real friends from back home won't leave you. They'll stick around and be interested in it and interested in what you have to say. But I think going to a highly academic competitive institution, you come back, and I was speaking in a posher accent, like my accent changed. I didn't realize it had happened, but it just happened because you're around people that have accents like this, and it influences the way you speak, the slang you use. And I remember my parents and my friends being like, what's that word mean? Where's that come from? And it's not that I changed and became more pretentious. It just meant that I was surrounding myself with different people and in different slang that they were using and taking that on board. Another point about being a first generation student is I definitely felt like I was the least well-read or the least well-educated out of my peers in college studying English, and that meant I put a lot of pressure on myself to work harder and not have as much fun because I felt like an imposter or like I needed to prove myself. This pressure was all placed on me by me. Nobody else made me feel like this, but my own insecurities made me feel like this. I worried that I wasn't as good as everybody else and I needed to work harder. I'd attend lectures, and some of the lecturers would reference books or writers or theorists or movements that I'd never even heard of before, or in classes and supervisions with my professors. Maybe some of my peers would mention things I'd never heard of before, and I'd feel really insecure, like, gosh, like, I've never heard of that book, should I have read that? And that's okay to not know what other people are talking about. You can't have read absolutely every book in the world before you get to Cambridge University. And I remember confiding in my professor about it and saying, I feel, really stupid compared to everybody else. They talk about things I've never even heard of. And he said, but Emma, don't you realise you'll talk about things that they haven't heard of either. It's just a learning curve. If you hear something you've never heard of before, write it down, go read it. Like, you don't need to read everything, but take this as an opportunity to learn from what your peers have read, and let that inform what you read and how you study. And don't feel insecure because we've all read different things. We all know different things. And he actually told me to use this to my advantage. So actually, after my first year exams, when I received my examiner feedback, they praised me for my colloquial way of writing, for being conversational and funny and writing quite simple sentences that really got my message across. Because according to examiners, a lot of candidates come in and use really big words and talk about really fancy movements and theorists that they don't really understand, but they're just doing it to sound cleverer than they really are, or to try and make a clever point, but it gets muddled. And I actually got praised for being to the point and actually saying something interesting without having to dress it up and make it sound fancier than it is, because my points were meaningful in themselves and they didn't need that ornamentation. So that was really nice to hear, that actually just speaking as I normally would and writing as I normally would and putting my personality into my writing was what I was doing well and what people like to read. Following along from being first generation, or maybe from a different social or financial background, there were some events that I felt like I couldn't afford and couldn't attend. For example, I couldn't go on big skiing trips, or I didn't go out drinking all the time because that's really expensive and I wanted to save my money. A point about finance is college will definitely make provisions for you if you can't afford things. They have bursaries in place, they have scholarships in place that you don't need to pay back. So never worry about your financial situation. And chances are you'll find other things to do that don't cost money. You might not get to attend a skiing trip, but you could definitely do other holidays with your friends that are more affordable. And you don't need to go out drinking every night. You can do games nights in your house for free. You can go to a pub instead, rather than spending money on extortionate club prices. Actually, talking about alcohol as well, I was really surprised to find out there is a really big drinking culture at Cambridge. Now, obviously I'm from Newcastle, so I expected that a lot of universities, or maybe party universities, would have big drinking cultures, and a lot of people would like to go on nights out regularly, and I was quite surprised. I thought everybody at Cambridge will be nerdy like me and not like drinking, and a lot of people do, and it meant that I struggled to make friends because I didn't go out drinking in Freshers Week. I didn't want to go clubbing every night. I wanted to get up early for my lectures and make sure I did my work well. I know, boring, whatever, call me what you want, but that's just what I wanted to prioritize at university. Some people would rather have the social experience, and you do you. Like, if that's what you want, that's what you're here for. But personally, I was there for the academic side, and I was worried that I couldn't make friends because I wasn't drinking. And obviously, coupled with the imposter syndrome, it meant that I also wasn't doing things during the day because I was spending all my time studying during the day. I wouldn't go out for picnics or for ice cream or for lunches and things, and I really do regret that because I didn't need to spend that much time studying. And I think when I came into my second year, I realised I don't need to drink to have fun. I don't need to drink to make friends. And as soon as I accepted that, that's when I established a really good, solid friendship group that had similar interests to me. We didn't like clubbing, so instead we went to pubs, or we'd drink in the staircase where we lived and play board games instead, or we didn't have to drink, or we'd go out for lunches instead, or dinners. And you can also attend sports societies, music societies, cultural societies. There are so many opportunities to make friends. And formal halls, like for formal dinners at university, where you didn't need to get drunk to have fun. And finally, I'd just like to say, studying at the University of Cambridge was both the best and the worst experience of my life, but I wouldn't change it for the world. All of the stress and exams and pressure and essay writing and lectures to attend and the heavy workload is so worth it to be in an environment where you're constantly learning and challenging yourself, for the fancy balls, the dinners, all of the events that the university puts on, the friends, the memories, all of it. I would never change it. And if somebody said, do you want to go back in time and change your decision? I would never change my mind. I am so glad I studied at Cambridge. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. I had to get that in there. I did study English, I'm sorry. But it is true. And for every bad memory I have of crying over an essay, I have 10 good memories of going punting with friends, or going to Mayball, or going to a formal hall for my birthday or something. Like, I do have memories for everything, and I would never regret that decision. And I would like to thank all of my professors who supported me, all of the amazing friends I made who supported me, my family for supporting me throughout my whole time there. I couldn't have wished for anything better, and I'm so glad that I achieved my dream in studying at the University of Cambridge. If you're considering applying to Cambridge, or you've been offered a place at Cambridge, that you do accept it and you do think it is the right institution for you, I hope this has helped you in some way, but I do not want to put anybody off studying at Cambridge, and I think this is ultimately only a decision you can make. And if you think this is the right place for you, then go for it. Equally, if you think another university or another course is best suited to your interests, then pick that instead. But make sure it is the right choice for you. Don't let anybody else influence your decision. And best of luck, everybody. Bye.